Hey everyone, Picco from RaiderIO here. We have the privilege of chatting with none other than Cirra, one of the leaders of community org KeystoneMasters. Cirra is a former MDI champion, caster, and contractor of Blizzard, and has recently announced the beginning of his new broadcast company called Keystone Productions. Today, we are aiming to learn more about his big upcoming event called Battle of the Bands. So, without further ado, let's dig in. Hey, Cirra, so nice having you here.
What up? Thanks so much for having me. Great to talk to you.
Shall we just start with a little introduction? Some of them might already know who you are, but tell us a little more about you, your WoW background story, and the origin of Keystone Masters.
Absolutely. So my origins in WoW probably go back to about 2018. That's kind of when I started doing things which people might know me for. So first thing I did was I competed in the 2018 MDI. So I was the captain and the healer of the team that won, Charles Angels. We played on the BlizzCon stage later that year. And then for me, that's sort of that's where everything kicked off. So we played that tournament, and I realized afterwards that there was nowhere really for me and the team to get used to playing in a live environment. Back then, we didn't have like multiple group stages and weekends and things like that. It was just one event in the year. And so I put on a friendly match with a couple of my friends just for fun. We streamed it online on Twitch as well, and it was the worst thing you've ever seen. We have deleted that and scrubbed it from the internet, but we could tell it was still fun though. Like everyone enjoyed it. The people who watched it had a good time. All 10 of them. So we thought, maybe we can do this again and sort of learn, improve, and make something better. And that's where Keystone Masters. That's where it began.
Awesome. And what led you to finally start your own broadcast production? What has that
Mm.
process been like?
Yeah, so I've been involved, like I said, with esports since about 2018. Um, and then I started Keystone Masters up with a good friend of mine, Shine. And I decided in 2021, I think it was, that this is what I wanted to do as a job, as a career. I didn't really know necessarily what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted it to be esports related and events related in some way. Going out to BlizzCon and seeing like the behind the scenes of that, like you guys see the front of it, the back is even more impressive, if not more impressive, especially if you're into tech and things like that. And so I started a degree, BSc in esports production, learn all about the tech and how all these things come together. And so it sort of just naturally fell in that I was doing all of these productions anyway, putting on all of this stuff, and it's a lot easier to sort of get yourself out there, get yourself known when you've got like an image, when you've got a brand, when you've got a logo. And obviously, sort of with the start in Keystone Masters, I wanted to bring that into it, so we decided to become Keystone Productions. That was how we got going in that.
And you just announced it that you started that production. And do you already have plans for 2024? And what are they?
Um, Yeah, so 2024 is very busy. We'll talk about why in a little bit, a lot of work stuff. But for Keystone, so we've got Battle of Bands coming up. That's the main thing that's going to be on 13th and 14th of April, twitch.tv/Keystone Masters. Later in the year, we've got The War Within that's going to be releasing, and we have a little show which we did back in, I think it was Shadowlands was when we did the last one. In the Shadowlands beta, where we did a little beta bash event, and we just got some people on, all for fun, testing out all the dungeons with all the bugs and all the awfulness, new affixes, all that fun stuff. I think we're planning on bringing that one back. In terms of the plans, there is something that we want to do. We're waiting on some Blizzard support to make that one happen. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do that one this year. But it'll be dungeons, it'll be big, it'll be glorious, all that good juicy stuff.
Will it have the Cirra touch?
Always. They all have the Cirra touch.
We know you as a very thorough and creative player, like always have been.
That's a very polite way of saying it.
And you kind of like to test the limits in game and find all the spots and corners you can use to make cool things work during a key. And I remember that years back already, I would be getting those, middle of the night messages. Yo, I just found this. This is so cool. I need to show you this, etc., etc. Can you tell us a bit more about some of those cool things you've discovered or innovated?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this, like I never claimed to be the one single person who was ever inventing this stuff. I think a lot of like all the stuff that you see on the MDI now, it's been stuff that live players have been using for years and years and years. I think the MDI guys, we just all sort of saw it and went, great, how can we put this in our runs and sort of use it to our advantage, I guess. I think a lot of the things that Shells did that were quite unique was the way that we just the way that we understood dungeons. Like we went in there and understood like the pathing of mobs, how you can efficiently move around dungeons. It wasn't all about grabbing as much count as you can in one go. It was about being efficient with it. There would be times where, I'd be saying, hey, I think this one pull might be better. We have to spend like 20 seconds walking, and you'd have like a shine or divine going, no, there's no way that's going to be more efficient. And we always had this thing where whenever we like couldn't agree on something, we just go, right, stopwatch it. Stopwatch it, get the stopwatch out. We'll do the one version and we'll test the time on it. We'll do the other version, we'll test the time on it, and we'll see. Yeah, I think the other thing that we did a lot of, so back in 2018, back in Legion, you could switch gear sets in between dungeons, a very fun feature. And we had sets for everything. Like we had sets for individual pulls. Like we were switching gear all the time. I can't remember if we had the gear tracker back then on the MDI broadcast. I don't think we did. But if we did, you would have seen we were switching gear sets all the time, doing all kinds of crazy things like using trinkets to go and grab mobs over hills and all kinds of nonsense. Like I have a Jara, there was so many things in there. Were just like I think it was Kill Jaden's Burning Wish was on the trinkets. I'm just like sending Kill Jaden's Burning Wish flying over this mountain, going through those trees, grabbing all kinds of extra stuff. That was a pretty fun one for me at least.
It was also awesome to watch, just like seeing what teams come up with, right? And on that note, would you wish that something like that would come back, just to be able to switch gear during a key?
I do. I was a big fan of keys in Legion in general. Like, I mean, I think for obvious reasons, like I competed in it. That's when sort of all of the stuff happened for me. But I think a lot of players as well resonate with those keys. Like when you ask people what their favorite dungeons are, usually a Legion dungeon. Hello. Usually a Legion dungeon is in there, at least in their top three, if not their top five. But I think the game is slightly different now. I think the way that the devs are trying to create it maybe doesn't fit in that well with gear swapping. And competitively, as much as I love it, now that I'm on the broadcast side of things, it's a pain. It's a headache. It would cause me more problems now if it came back. Than it would back then. But from a player and viewer perspective, it just unlocks so many cool things.
Okay, all I hear is bring it back. Cool, thanks.
Sure. Let's flip that out. Little soundbite. Cirra endorsed.
So you're a healer main. Which class in Spec is your favorite and why?
I mean, it's going to be a healing spec, obviously. I think so I started off, and when I first started playing, I wanted to play a priest, and I remember like I don't know why I was just drawn to the fact that like it was almost like the sort of the traditional healer, and I started playing holy. That was when I first started, and I was just like, cool, it's got the spell called heal. So I feel like if I want to play a healing character, the one that has the spell called heal is probably going to be the best one. And then I hit max level, and a friend of mine was just like, "Hey, like there's this other spec called Disc." I was like, "Oh, okay. Tell me about that. What does that do?" And so when I first started playing, that was back in Mists of Pandaria. And for those of you who know Mists of Pandaria Disc Priest, you know why it's my answer, because that was so much fun to play. So much fun to play. You had Spirit Shell back then. You had the fact that you could just heal basically through atonement, and you didn't actually have to apply atonement back then. At least I don't think you had to apply atonement back then. Either way, you were just doing huge amounts of damage. whilst healing groups at the same time. And then disc, I just played that so much. Like every expansion, I tried to main disc as much as I could. MDI took me away from that. We had the Holy Paladin meta, and then we went into the Mistweaver meta, and then there was a little bit of time where Resto Druid was the thing, which those were dark times. So I was not a big fan of playing that. But yeah, it's kind of always been Priest for me. I think Priest is always going to be the class and the spec that I come back to. But I've got to admit, being able to out DPS on a Holy Paladin in Legion, that was fun. That was very fun. I enjoyed that probably more than I should have.
I will make some people angry probably, but Legion, I hated Legion, especially because of Holy Paladin, because it made me give up my Resto Charm.
Yeah.
Because it was so stupidly easy, kinda, to just like play Holy Paladin, right? And just perform on a really well level compared to Resto Charm, where you had to do so many things to make it work, and it was like a heartbreak. When
there's always those people. There's always at least one person per season who will just make a healer work. Like the healer that just everyone's just like, no, that's you don't bring that healer. Like whether it be a Resto Druid. Like I remember when like JB was competing against us in the MDI, and he'd always bring a Resto Druid. You had a whole bunch of people who tried to make like Resto Shamans work as well during weird seasons. Like I take my hat off to those guys. Like they're absolutely insane the way that they like still manage to push up those keys, even though the healer isn't the meta. Yeah, I feel you though. Like it's not fun like being forced to play the meta. But like when you compare a key on like your off meta pick to your meta pick, it becomes so much smoother. It just becomes so much smoother, especially in pugs.
It really does. I remember like my Holy Paladin, I leveled a Holy Paladin in Legion, and I was just starting to gear it, and I was probably like 30, 40 eye level behind. And we started already like, let's do that 18 or 20, right? Quarter stars. And I was like, on that, like I'm almost naked, right? And it just felt like a breeze.
So my favorite thing was like so there was a friend of mine who was trying to get into healing. He'd been a DPSer for like the longest time. And he was a rep paladin main. And so I said to him, hey, you should just try a key as holy. And he was like, but I have no idea like I don't know what I'm doing. And I was like, it literally doesn't matter. That's a beautiful thing about the spec. It does not matter. You will be fine. Don't worry about it. Just like wings, Holy Avenger, hit some Holy Shocks and some Crusader Strikes. You're gonna be golden. Don't worry about it.
It actually was like that, and it's kind of sad, to be honest.
Yeah. And then Ashen Hollow came around. Those were dark times.
Very dark times.
Very dark times. Ellesmere's bringing it back though. I saw him on the season 4 PCR. Yeah. He was getting excited about it. And if he gets excited about it, I get excited about it.
That's fair enough. Let's just talk a bit more about healing. What makes it so interesting for you to be the healer in a team?
I mean, it's an interesting question. So for me personally, I feel like I have the most impact when I'm on a healer. Like I think tanks and healers, most people sort of argue between like, oh, which one does the most, which one has the most going on. Whenever I play a tank, I always still sort of feel a little at the mercy of the group. When I'm in a healer, I don't know. I just feel like I have more control. I think that's what I like. Is I like having control over keys, and being able to have those clutch moments. Hello, friends. Sorry about that. Being able to have those clutch moments where the team's going down, you're on the brink of defeat, and then you're the one who brings it back. I think those are just those are the highlight moments for me. Those are why I love playing healer.
It's funny that you say that, because like I remember when playing with you, it's more like you have the control over who dies, right?
In a way, I like to think that DPSs control their own fate. There's these two hidden abilities, which I don't think a lot of DPSs actually know that they have. So one is called a healing potion, and one is called a defensive. And a lot of people aren't actually aware of these. They're fantastic tools that can keep you alive in most situations. Um, yeah, that's my PSA. That's it really. Use those more, and then I don't have to heal. It's really funny. Like a load of people said to me, like during the 3 years that I was competing, they were there like, I don't understand why you play healer because all you want to do is DPS. Like all the time, that's all I see you do is DPSing keys. And I was like, yeah, like it's just fun as a healer though. I don't know why. It's just it's more fun topping the meters as a healer than it is as a DPS.
Because you usually aren't supposed to top the meters as a healer, right? So
Yeah.
when you do, it's just like, yeah.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Let's talk a bit about KeystoneMasters. When KeystoneMasters started, you kind of, can I say, use it as a playground to test new tournament formats and demonstrate their feasibility. Are there any ideas that made their way to official WoW esports? And if anything we might recognize?
Yeah, so I will firstly say this. I will never take any credit for anything that is in WoW Esports. There's a fantastic team that run that show. The great thing though about Keystone Masters is we're not a huge company. We don't have you know Blizzard's necessarily behind us saying, hey, this broadcast is really, really important. So you need to be hitting these metrics. You need to be doing things in a certain way. We've kind of got that freedom, like you say. We can make it a bit of a playground, test out new things. And I mean that kind of was the theme throughout all of the events. The first big one we did, we had one called Windspring Fling, which was just like sort of a standard tournament, and then right after that we had format experiments, which it was literally designed as a what can we do here? Like what can we do to change the format up? How can we make it more exciting for the players? And then maybe we can showcase at Blizzard. Hey, you could maybe mix things up a little bit. I think it was the season after format experiments. I might be wrong. It was sometime around then, where Blizzard changed the comp stacking, or was it? It was either spec stacking or class stacking. I think it was spec stacking originally, because we had those few seasons where it was like double unholy DK or triple hunter and all kinds of nonsense was going on, and the players didn't really like it, the viewers didn't really like it, and so that was sort of the inspiration for that tournament. Was okay, what could we do to fix that? And then Blizzard afterwards put in some restrictions there. We had a tournament called Gauntlet, which the concept for that was a lot of players at the time were saying we don't necessarily like the fact that on a broadcast day we might be like the first series of the day and then the last series of the day. So we might be sat around for like, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, sometimes 6 hours, not doing anything. So I went, hey, how can we create a format which means that everybody's playing all the time? Like, you're here to play. That's what you want to do. How can we get you playing? So it's basically this style where every single team was playing at the same time. So anyone who entered, we had, I think it was like, I want to say like 60 or 70 teams who were like all in the first round, and they all did their keys at exactly the same time. And it was just like a first to the finish thing. So in like round one, it was like the first 30 teams who finish out of the 60, you guys go through to the next one. You do it again, and then like half are eliminated, and you keep on going and going until eventually it's just a 1v1. And I think in some ways, I like to think of that as a bit of a precursor to TGP. The idea that you've got lots of teams playing at the same time, and they're not just restricted into like a one team versus one team traditional MDI format. Yeah, I'd say those are probably the two big things. There's a lot of things which like Keystone has done, which WoW Esports has then done afterwards. But they're very sort of standard broadcasting things. They're not, I wouldn't say we invented this crazy new thing. I mean, all of this stuff has been done in esports for years, but it is always nice when you see like a tiny little something that you've created being moved into an official program.
And when something like that happens, it's just that Blizzard comes up to you and is like, hey, we really love that idea that you just like showcased. Is there any possibility that we can maybe yoink some of it, or if you can talk about that.
So back in the day, no. So in between 2018 and 2021, anytime they saw something that they thought was cool, they would just bring it in. They'd just go, "That's cool." It's there's no sort of copyright going on with like tournament ideas. That's not really a thing that you can do. And honestly, if it makes the main programs better, that was always the goal for me. It was if we can discover something fun which resonates with players and viewers, and just gives a better experience for everybody, great. Bring it in. That's fantastic. And then I ended up working on the team. So at that point, I was sort of helping to shape those ideas anyway. So it wasn't a case of necessarily showing that something would work. I could just suggest it in a meeting and be like, I've had this wonderful idea where we spawn GMs in and we summon people and we do all these crazy things, and being told, no, that's stupid. Why have you even brought that to the table? You know that's going to be bad. I'm like, yeah, but it'd be fun though. There's been a lot of things that I've come up with, which I think are very fun ideas. My bosses maybe less so, but you never know. We've done some one-offs before, so maybe there'll be some crazy Cirra shenanigans back in future seasons of MDI.
Like technically, you could use those ideas for KeystoneMasters, right?
Possibly. Some of them you need GM. You need GM access. Like there was one idea where I wanted to mess around with like taking players from one dungeon and putting them into another dungeon. Like you've got one team playing, and all of a sudden, JB appears in your dungeon and is just trying to PvP you down. Be kind of fun. There was another one like so in which expansion was it? We had seasonal affixes for a couple of seasons. Um, and there was one thing I really wanted to try doing, create this absolute nightmare key called the Four Seasons. And it was literally just each seasonal affix, all four of them shoved onto a key. You had to deal with all of them at once. That would have required a little bit of dev time, but I don't know. I just feel like, combining all of them together, like you've got like a reaping wave coming after you, and then you're dealing with the big red blob and trying to go into the awakened realm. I don't know. I always tend to go for crazy equals fun, which isn't necessarily true. But certainly like in Keystone Masters, where the stakes are a little bit lower and there's not like millions of dollars on the line, they tend to go down quite well, those fun formats.
When you create ideas like that, like for KeystoneMasters, for example, how much do you keep in mind, okay, what would be cool for the players and what would be awesome to watch for the audience, but maybe a little bit less fun for the players, but it would be actually way more awesome for the viewers, so let's just do it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm quite fortunate in the way that I've gotten into esports. So I started off as a player, and then I moved into grassroots tournament organizing. So doing a little bit of everything. And then when I moved into like my freelance capacity, I've done a whole range of stuff. Producing, directing, technical directing, replay operation, camera operation, audio, just like a runner as well. There was one weekend where I was a runner. I did, what was it? I think 26 miles worth of walking in a weekend around Birmingham, getting coffees for people and stuff like that. Like I've done so many different things that it gives me that perspective of all the stakeholders that are involved. Like I can always think when we're debating a change or thinking about a format, okay, I was a player. If I'm sort of putting myself in my player hat on almost, how would I react to this? Like, would I think, oh, that's fun, or would I think that is really annoying? And we've had instances of that where I'm not going to say this happens every time, but generally, when you give the audience control over what they want to see or what happens, they tend to always pick the worst option, like the option that is the least fun for the players. That's how viewers tend to get enjoyment. We had a few on MDI where I think it was in like one of the first TGPs, where the viewers were voting on affix combinations and dungeons. And I just remember one of them was like, it was like Grimrail Depot with Sanguine, like sanguine explosive or something horrible like that. And when you give the audience what they want, generally the idea is fun, but then they see it and they see the player struggling, and it becomes less fun almost immediately for them. Um, so there's a bit of like, you can push the players a small amount and you can give them something which isn't that fun, as long as you kind of compensate them as well by giving them something where they can have some fun and give them a fun little playground to chill in. So like with Gauntlet, we had to do this. We had to strike that balance perfectly. There was one key in there where it was the viewers voting on it. So we let the viewers vote on everything. We said we don't care what abomination you make. Like you can literally have whatever you want. And they did some horrific key. I think it was like tyrannical fortified uh bolstering burst. I can't remember what it was. It was just some just horrible abomination of a key. And so I went, right, but there needs to be some sort of reward for like putting the players through that. So the key after that, there were no affixes. And it was just the dungeon. And it was like, how fast can you run that dungeon? And it gave the players a sense of, okay, you've put us through this horrible traumatic experience, but we got something fun out of it. So I think it's just finding the right balance between making sure that the players are enjoying themselves, or if they're not enjoying themselves, that there is a very good reason for it.
So you found a way to keep your devil also like on the low, so it doesn't win all the time.
Maybe.
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 So as a player yourself,
Hmm.
what are fun affixes to you, and what are affixes where you are more like, please no?
Yeah, I mean, as a player, I'll be honest with you, I don't like affixes. Just in general. Like the dungeons for me are exciting enough on their own that even after doing the dungeon the 400th time, right, I would still find enjoyment just in the base itself, just without having to add anything extra onto it. I understand why affixes are in the game. I feel like it is a more beneficial system having them in there. It makes a new experience every week, and it gives you a reason to keep coming back and playing. But someone like me, I'm naturally quite competitive, and so the idea of coming into a system where I'm mostly competing against myself, it's basically speedrunning is what dungeons are. Certainly at the high level with the pushing and everything. It's just a case of beating your own personal best. There's nothing that anyone else can do to sort of stop you apart from you. But yeah, I mean, I did really love like when they were experimenting with the seasonal affixes, and when they were bringing in what was it, the kiss curse system? I think that's what they were trying to do. These
Yeah.
affixes where it was like there was a slight punishment, but then you were rewarded for it. So it might be that you got a huge damage boost or like reaping. Everybody loved reaping. That was very fun. I mean, everyone loved reaping until you accidentally triggered it at the wrong time, and then you got half of the dungeon running towards you. But yeah, I think personally, I'm not a fan of most affixes because generally they're sort of there to present a challenge. I think the dungeons are challenging enough, but yeah, if I had to pick favorites, it's going to be the ones where you're getting some kind of reward, or you can do something fun, you can manipulate it and get big damn. That's what everybody wants, big damn.
True, big damn.
Mm.
Let's head a bit to the other side, the non-player side. Many people may or may not know that you also work on official Blizzard Esports in an admin capacity. Can you explain what exactly it is you do during like things like MDI or AWC? What's that like?
Sure. I've got two roles as of today, or as of when we were recording this, and I have two roles. So my first one is as a broadcast coordinator. So that's my primary job. So the bulk of that is to do with making sure the players are where they're supposed to be at the right times is probably the easiest way I can describe that. So whenever we've got player interviews, making sure they're in the call, ready to go, they know what's going on, their cameras are looking good, all of that stuff. Anything to do with player cams is me as well. I bring all of those in, make sure everybody's looking nice, looking snazzy. And then within that role as well, it's kind of developed to be more of a broadcast support role. So I knew a little bit about streaming, OBS, vMix, things like that before I joined the crew. And then through my degree, I've learned, and just through working as well, learned a whole lot more skills. So I basically went, how can I apply these to the broadcast setup that we have? So what we do is whenever we're streaming shows, we're not all in person. We're not all in the same place. So I live in the UK, and then most of the crew live over in the States. And we use our PCs to connect to these virtual machines, which are all hosted in the cloud. And what that means is that at any point, I can jump into any of the PCs. So I can jump into one of the observers' PCs. If one of them needs a break, I can just do a bit of observing for them. If the replay guy suddenly gets ill, that's fine. I can jump in, I can do that. Let's say that our producer, our technical director, Matt, he's like, yo, my DoorDash just got here. Oh no, we need to go to a break right now. But like I need to go to the door right away. I can just jump in. There's been a couple of times actually where there've been some really bad storms in the States recently. And so sort of having me over in the UK has been a bit of a blessing because I'm just not affected by those, obviously. And so our producer's internet's gone down. It's only happened once or twice. It's been really, really bad weather. But at that point, I can literally just jump into the Switcher PC and just take the show over and just start producing it. So that's like the sort of primary broadcast focus role I have. And then as of season 4, I've been picked up for 3 months as a production coordinator. So that's like the polar opposite of what I've just described. So with broadcast, you've kind of got the pre-broadcast of management side of things, and then you've got the actual technical execution. So the production coordinator role is all about planning. It's all about designing the seasons, what they look like, making sure everybody gets onto the TR okay, making sure the TR is up, making sure that rule sets are ready to go, making sure that everyone's contracts are in place, making sure payments get paid out. Just anything sort of logistical is what I handle in that role. So a bit like I've done for most of my career, doing a little bit of everything. And depending on the show, like what I may be doing changes. So for MDI, like the traditional MDI format, which was played a lot, you don't necessarily need 2 admins. Like you can have 2 admins, you can have 1 per team. It's not always needed, but for something like TGP, you've got 6 teams going on. 1 person cannot watch 6 teams. It's hard enough watching like 2 or 3 teams. So I jump in, and instead of doing player cams, I'll usually do adminning for that. Yeah, just to help Toxic out, because I mean, watching 6 teams and trying to capture every single thing they do, try doing it one time. It's impossible, very not fun. But yeah, it's sort of a sort of a high level of how I work on WoW Esports.
How do you prepare for events like that, like AWC, MDI, TGP? You know, it's coming up. You know, it's game day, right? How do you prepare for that?
So yeah, I mean, there's 2 ways. So obviously, when we know we've got a season coming up, like season 4, for example, when that's coming out, usually I will just jump on live. I will jump on live servers. I will play as much as I can, just so I understand exactly what is going on, what players are trying to do in these keys, how they work, what the pain points are, and as well for things like in MDI, TGP especially, knowing how the affixes interact with dungeons is super important. We've learned that the fun way. If you don't play, or at least you don't sort of examine the data, sometimes you put keys like affixes on certain keys, and it's just pain. It's just really, really painful for the players, and it's really painful to watch. So just making sure you've got a good knowledge of what's going on just throughout the season is important. In terms of like actually prepping for the broadcast days themselves, like a day or 2 before, usually it'll be production meetings. So making sure that we're all on the same page as to what are the stories that we're telling, if there's been any rule changes recently, anything that we need to be made aware of, if anything's changed in the game, making sure that all the players are aware of that. If there's anything upcoming, it really is just a case of making sure we're all on the same page, making sure we know what's going to happen, going through the run of show, beat by beat, so that nothing is a surprise to us on the production team. On the actual day itself, there was a very, very wise man who once told me that putting on a broadcast is like riding a dragon. You know, you'll get on the dragon, and at that point, the dragon's deciding what's happening. Um, and either you get thrown off because you just can't keep up, or you ride with it and you have the best time of your life. And honestly, for me, that's what every single broadcast is like. You get surprises thrown at you. You know, sometimes things break, sometimes things don't go to plan. I think, as weird as it sounds, those are kind of the moments I enjoy the most. Like, obviously, you want everything to go well. Like in an ideal situation, you know, you've planned everything out and it goes exactly as you planned. But my favorite moments are the moments that you guys will never see, because behind the scenes, everything is on fire, everything's burning, and we're just doing everything we can to make sure that none of that gets put forward to broadcast. The only time I think recently where that's ever happened was every single one of our PCs went down. The data center that was hosting every single virtual PC for WoW Esports just crashed,
Oh
just
no.
went completely offline. So yeah, I think so. We were streaming. We're streaming normally, and then all of a sudden the feed cuts out for like 2 seconds. This is what the viewer sees. The feed cuts out for 2 seconds. We switch it over to the observer PC. It's kind of hard to explain, but we do have the capacity to like say, okay, we can't connect to that PC, but the PC is still going. So we switched onto that PC, and then everything went. And so we just had color bars on Twitch, and that's like probably the worst thing, because at that point you're not sending anything. You know, there's no sound, there's no nothing, and so the switcher comes back up and it's been completely wiped. So like mid-show, and bear in mind, like there's weeks of prep that goes into like designing these packages, months even sometimes, to actually create these shows on the back end. And just midway through a broadcast, we are scrambling, trying to rebuild like the whole system from scratch. That was probably one of the most terrifying but equally exhilarating moments I think I've had in esports at all.
How do you keep your cool during a moment like that? Like, it sounds like a nightmare, right? You're like,
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
prepared for weeks and months, and like suddenly everything is on fire. Like, insert this is fine meme here, right? Like,
Mhm.
how do you keep your cool?
I mean, you have to. You just straight up have to. Sort of, your I mean, it's your job, like first and foremost. You can't just go, okay, cool. Well, that happened. You're being paid to do the thing, as well as the fact that we've got, you know, tens of thousands, depending on the show, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people who are watching simultaneously, who are expecting to see something. Um, in those moments, the first thing you feel is confusion, because you're staring at a screen and suddenly it's gone black, and
Yeah,
you're just like, oh wait, what? And there's like a sort of a collective moment where everyone there just went, oh, that's fine, that's probably just on my side, it's probably just a me thing, like it's all good, you know, because we're using our personal computers to connect to these virtual computers. So if something goes wrong on our computer, doesn't mean that the virtual computer's broken. So we just all went, it's fine. And so you had about 2 3 people all on comms at the same time starting to say, hey, my PC's gone. And then the producer just, so we call this thing voice of God, um, which is where you just push a button and you can talk to every single channel in production. The only time that that button is used is either right at the top of the show, where it's like a 5 4 3 2 1, we're live, right at the end of the show, where it's like a, hey everyone, this is like all cool, thanks for your show, thanks for, you know, the work that you do, or if something goes wrong in the middle. Whatever you hear like VOG in the middle of a show, you're like, oh damn, and it just cuts in like, right, switch has gone down. And that's like, I can't describe the feeling of hearing those 3 words, or, you know, so yeah, switch has gone down, 3 words. Um, I can't even put that into terms. That's like, I don't know, that's like driving a car and hearing someone going, I've deleted the engine. Like, you know, you're just like, well, what do I do? Like, you know, this doesn't function anymore. But at that point, you just have to rely on the weeks and months of work that you've put in. You just have to rely on the skill of the people around you, and we're very fortunate to work with an extremely skilled team of people at WoW Esports who, yeah, we managed to get the show back up and running within I don't know how long. It felt like 20 minutes, but it was probably only like 5.
Yeah, awesome. Like, it's always awesome to watch you all as a team working. Like, it's incredible what you guys do and girls and in between, right? Like, it's amazing. So I don't think I'd really noticed that there was a big issue, maybe like a hiccup, right? So just listening to you be like, everything was on fire, and oh my god, why do we do this? It's just like impressive to hear that still everything kind of went smoothly, right?
That is like the highest compliment that you could possibly pay the team is I didn't know anything was going wrong, because that means that we did our jobs to the best of our ability. Like, especially if something is going wrong and you're like, oh, there was a bit of a weird bit in the middle, but like other than that, it was fine. We're like, great, fantastic, we'll take that.
Yeah.
Cool, appreciate it.
So with everything you've experienced so far, like talk like directing, producing, observing, like all that kinds of cool stuff. Do you have any advice for people trying to break into the industry?
Yes. I mean, it's a very difficult industry to break into. Like, I'll say that first and foremost. If you're wanting to break into it, you need to be very serious about it, and prepared to have a rough start, a very rough start. The biggest thing, I hope I can say this. The biggest piece of advice that I would give is don't be a dick. I know that sounds very strange, but when you're working a show with somebody for, I mean, sometimes our broadcast days can be 14, 15, 16 hours, depending on what it is. You want to be around people who are fun to be around, and who are nice and who are helpful. Just try and be helpful. Try and be nice. Try and be somebody that people want to be around. There is an obvious expectation that you'll understand the technical workflows. And I would always advise know as much about the workflow that you're working in as you can. So even if, for example, I'm not a replay operator on a show, I will still want to understand what the replay op is doing and how they're doing it, just in case I can help them. Because there are so many times on shows where you'll have maybe a little bit of downtime, your role's not really doing anything, and somebody else might be having the most stressful 5 minutes of their show like that they could possibly be having. And just being able to be flexible, understanding different roles, sort of what their needs are, is very helpful in that situation. As well as just, I feel like having an understanding of every single role, even if you're not a master of them, it means you can flex into more. That's literally how I started. Was I started off doing one thing, and then because I was doing grassroots tournaments, I was like, okay, well, I need to learn this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing, and the list just like kept on growing. And being somebody who can just flex into other roles is extremely valuable. But yeah, I would just say try and be the best person that you possibly can. Practice as much as you can. You will have a rough time. That's just unfortunately the nature of the industry. But if you want to succeed, I don't want to say like, manifest it, but my experience was just that. It was, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be here. I didn't know how to be there, so I upskilled myself, and I made myself a person that people wanted to have on their shows. And then, yeah, people kept inviting me back, and now they can't get rid of me.
Yeah, and we are not so sure if that's a good thing or not.
Who knows?
I'm just kidding. Like,
Who
I
knows?
love, I love working with you. I love having you around. So I get it that people also don't want to get rid of you.
Thank you. It's very kind.
Okay, so let's switch the topic a bit. After everything we just talked about, like all the things you do, you are a player yourself. You mostly played PvE.
Yes.
Let's tackle the elephant in the room. The Battle of the Bands and it being a PvP event. How did that come?
Yeah, that caught a lot of the players off guard as well. They saw Keystone and immediately went, okay, well, that's probably going to be a dungeon thing, so I'm not going to sign up to that. Originally, a little sneak peek, a little exclusive little for you, this was going to be a LAN tournament. This was going to be hosted in person as part of my degree, as part of my capstone project. And so I went, what would be the best experience in person? Flying out a 5-man dungeon team versus flying out a 3-man PvP team saves you money.
Sure.
As well as so there's this big it's like I think £5-6 million production facility that we have access to at my university. You've got like a 4K LED volume. I was like, in the nicest way possible, I don't want to be restreaming players' UIs, which is what you have to do when you're doing dungeons, unless you have some kind of observer tool, which currently doesn't exist. So I went, yeah, I feel like the overall best experience is going to be, like for the viewers, is going to be in PvP. And then as we came together and went, okay, what does this tournament look like? What is the like sort of what is the thing? Like Keystone Masters tournaments, they always have a twist of some degree. There's always like an interesting format or a fun little surprise that the players don't really know about. So we went, right, what is the thing? What are we trying to do? And so originally I was going to bring back there was a series of tournaments by Diablos called the Diablos Death Bowl, which I helped work on. And that was all about spec bans. And it's something that players have been asking for in the AWC for a number of years now. And I went, okay, so we've got the data on spec bans. Nobody wants class bans. That's just, nobody wants that. There's no point even trying that. What about maps? Maybe we could do something with that. Maybe we could try out like a map banning system, picks ban, something like that. And that's what the whole tournament is centered around. So we sort of started off with being in PvP because of necessity. And then we went, okay, well, this could actually be fun. Let's gather some data. Let's do something. Let's try something. Blizzard's experimenting a lot with Season 4. We can experiment as well. Let's see if we can just gather a lot of data, and then going into, the war within, maybe we land on something. Maybe we find something really cool. We discover a hidden gem of a format. So yeah, we just want to have a bit of fun with it. We've never done PvP either. So I've worked on PvP projects, but never anything as part of Keystone. And I think the team is very excited to enter a new arena.
Awesome. And like just seeing the teams that applied for the event, right? Like there are some huge names in it.
Oh, for sure. We've got, I think 50% of both regions is comprised of AWC teams. So we've got the likes of Liquid, we've got My Way, we've got La Pompe, we've got so many fantastic teams. So many great names going to be competing. And I think being able to have those names as well, and being able to have those teams who do play in the AWC, makes it even better. I mean, one, the gameplay's better, but two, it means that when we do trial these new formats, we're trialing it with the people who would actually end up playing it, and they all give you brutally honest feedback. They will tell you straight up, this was dog. This was not good. I do not want to play this again. Please never do this. Which, in some ways, is almost more valuable data for me, is knowing what players don't want. Because if you know what players don't want, then that gives you a pretty good idea of what they do want. Or at least you know how you're not gonna get everybody mad on Twitter and setting Twitter ablaze because we announced a new format which nobody likes. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm super excited to watch the whole event on the weekend. How has that classic Cirra curiosity helped create the new event format we're about to see?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I've kind of got a lot of different hats that I put on. And whenever I start with a Keystone Masters event, the first thing I think about is it fun to play? It has to be fun to play. If it's not fun to play, then it's going to fail. Because a lot of these times, with like the community grassroots events that happen in WoW, the prize pools tend to be smaller than what players are used to. And so at that point, you have to offer them something else. It's not just a case of I'm competing in this because there's a lot of money. It's I'm competing in this. Why? Why am I competing in this? And so we always say, well, you're competing in it because it's fun, because you want to. The money's an added bonus. So that's always where we start. I think because I've been a player, usually I can put myself in their heads and go, okay, this would not be fun to play. Sometimes we just have no clue. We have no idea if something will be fun, so we just playtest it. we hop on the TR or we hop on live servers. There was a lot of that in the early days. A lot of that where we would just hop onto live servers, we'd get people in a group, and we'd go, cool. This is the restriction. This is how you have to play this. Tell me if this is fun. And we've had some horrible failures during that. But that's all good information, right? Like I say, knowing what's bad sometimes leads you to what is good. It's not the best way. Like obviously you'd rather just land straight away with what's good, but yeah, sometimes you have to try things. As I say, just being a player, I kind of have a pretty good idea of what's fun and not fun, or what's not fun. But there are some formats which you just don't know until it's been played. And I think that's why Keystone Masters is such a valuable asset, is because we can take those risks. And if something doesn't do well, then we go, yeah, okay, cool, our bad, that wasn't great. We'll do something else next time, and then we just change it up.
Yeah, at least you tried, right? And
Yeah.
okay, works not. I remember that it's a while back that we had that PvP event thingy testing 2 versus 2 versus
Yes.
2.
Yes.
And I'm not a PvP fan myself. Like, I don't like playing it, but like I actually had a lot of fun with that. And I was always hoping, like, hopefully that makes it to broadcast. Because as a player, it was kind of fun, right?
I mean that was what we started with that. So that was interestingly, we had the Diablo's Death Bowl, which was based around spec bans, and so we were thinking, myself and the Diablo's creative team, we're thinking, what's the next thing? Like, what is the next thing that we're going to move into? How are we going to create an experience which is something that you've not seen before? And so we started looking at, like, interestingly enough, battle royales. That was the first place we looked to. We went, okay, how could we create a battle royale within WoW? And so we realized that there were some options where, Horde can fight Alliance out in the open world, Alliance fight Horde, and there was a toy at the time, I can't remember what it was called. It was like the Dagger of N'Zoth or some weird toy, but it basically put you onto like a third neutral faction. So you could fight against Horde players and against Alliance players. And so we went, this is really cool. We can do these, like, 2v2v2 arena style matches. And the thing that I found really interesting was, like you say, people just enjoyed playing that as a concept. And then Plunderstorm got released, obviously, in the last few weeks. And that is all based around fairly open world 2v2v2 and now 3v3v3. And I was like, I did reach out to the dev. I did say, hey, how much of this was inspired by that crazy idea I had? And he said, none of it at all. None of it at all. Don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, I want my name on it. I've been scammed. No, but it is, like I say, it is always quite rewarding when you see, like, an idea that you came up with be born and be realized and it be successful, and you're sort of validated in that way, where you're like, yeah, you know what, if we had been able to do more of that, people would have it would have resonated with people, and they would have enjoyed it. So yeah, it's always interesting to see how these things sort of come full circle.
And I hope to see more of that for
Hopefully.
the future. So we are like close to getting like done. Two more, like, not one fun question, more like, if you could draft your dream MDI and AWC roster, including past players, who would you choose and why?
It's a tricky question. It's a very tricky question. I mean, for MDI, there's so many. I feel like, in all honesty, for MDI, I would pick Shells. I would just take that whole roster and put it back together. Like, when that team was firing on all cylinders, like when we were all on the same page, that team was unbeatable. That team was just unstoppable. Like, I would not change a single thing about that team. I think for AWC, I think I'm more of a PvE player than a PvP player, so that's where I can have a little bit of fun. I mean, number one, it's got to be healing stat on the Shadow Priest. That would be absolutely fantastic as a pick. Maybe not the best competitive pick, but in terms of having fun levels here, win rates here, I'll take the fun rate, to be honest. I think we're gonna need a good healer. I'm not saying that I'm not a good healer, but I think to compensate for that skill diff, I think we're gonna need a very good healer. I'd probably pick you've got to pick someone like Sea-Doo. Just
Yeah.
when you think of good healers, I think he's immediately the name that comes to mind. There's so many amazing players, to be honest. Like, obviously you've got the recent favorites, people like Meh. I'd love to see Meh come back. You've got Picco, you've got Waz, you've got all of those guys. I reckon any of those would slot in fantastically. Just because I think we need at least 2 good players. I feel like if you've got 2 good players, you've got obviously healing stat, very very accomplished player as well. And then I can maybe just sit on the bench. I think I'd like to be part of that team. Maybe just in sort of like a supportive role, like a cheerleading role. I think that would be quite good. That would be a good team, I think. We'll do that. Those are my 2 teams.
I mean, each team needs a cheerleader, right?
Sure.
How
Sure,
else
why
do
not?
you win?
There you go. That's very true. It's very, very true. Transmog, good transmog. A lot of people forget about that. 5% DPS increase with a good transmog.
Yeah, and if you jump while doing damage, it's like increases your crit.
Yeah, people don't know that. Like a lot of people don't realize that. Backpedaling as well. People always complain about backpedaling. It actually increases your hit chance. So, yeah.
To get hit.
Well, I guess, yeah.
Awesome. One last question for you. You won the MDI in 2018 with your team, as you mentioned, Shells Angels. And you got to play on the big stage during BlizzCon. What was that feeling like?
That was a great feeling. That was so. I always remember, and it's probably one of my favorite pictures that I have. Was the first moment where so before BlizzCon starts, all the competitors, they're already in the building. All the competitors, all the production, like everything is ready to go before the doors open. So we got to see all of the seats completely empty. And so bearing in mind that so the WoW stuff usually always takes place in one hall. There's like 4 massive halls, and it usually takes place in like one corner of one hall. And I think they maybe had, I don't know how many it would have been, a couple of thousand chairs, something like that. And we got to watch people come in, like one by one. You get people coming in, and the chairs were slowly filling up and filling up and filling up. And I said to the rest of the guys, I said, whatever you do, don't look up, because we had lights coming down. You couldn't see anything unless you did this. You sat up and you looked over the top of your monitor, right? And I had a couple of friends who were sat in the front row. They'd been camped out for hours to make sure they could get in. And yeah, I for me, looking up, seeing my friends down there, holding signs and everything, and seeing the thousands of people, that hall filled up immediately. This is the thing I love about BlizzCon so much. It's just, even when we do a small activation like Guild Clash, right? So many people come and they want to see it, they want to get involved. It's such a good feeling. Hearing the noise of the players as well. Like, that is a noise and a feeling I will never forget. My favorite moment that I will never forget, though, is I said to the guys, don't look over. Whatever you do, do not look over your monitors. Doru sat next to me. What is the first thing he does? Gets up, looks over his monitor. He just does this. Guys, I'm really nervous now. I was just like, why? Why did you do that? We told you not to do it. But yeah, I mean, BlizzCon it's just insane. It's something else. It's another level. I'm really hoping that we can get more WoW esports stuff going on at BlizzCon, because I don't want to take away from anything else, but I feel like WoW is the heart of BlizzCon. I don't know. It just, whenever there's WoW stuff going on, it resonates so well with people, and especially the esports stuff. I would love to see if we can get more stuff back at the BlizzCon stage for WoW.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sitting down with me and have that talk.
Thank you
Like,
for
I
having me.
appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It's been a really fun interview.
And yeah, to the watchers, thank you to everyone for watching. And for more exclusive RaiderIO content, follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and join our Discord server. Have a good one.